Romantic love was really invented by lower status men for lower status men, so that they might be able to compete with higher status men in the sexual marketplace for women. Because they didn't have the resources and the status and the opportunity that most women are looking for in their partners, they invented an intangible, romantic love that they argued was even more special and valuable than all of that mere stuff. It's kind of a spell that romantic lovers attempt to cast over their love objects. However, it's a tenuous, fragile spell that can really be broken at any time. So romantic love actually works only to the extent that the romantic lover succeeds in drawing the love object away from anything that would remind her, essentially, that the emperor has no clothes. Sort of attempting to draw the woman away from the world into this little universe of two, where everything that we need is in each other's eyes. Forget about everything else. Look only at me. It's a hypnotic spell whose objective is to lure the love object away from anything that could break the spell. That's why romance is generally a strategy for those who can't compete successfully in the world yet, a group that is overpopulated by young men. It's very, very hard to be a young man in this world, let me tell you. They're incompetent and inexperienced, so men can't do anything with them. And they're poor and low status, so women don't want anything with them. No young man is the king. And if they can't rule in the real world, one of their sexual strategies is to kind of hypnotize women with the fantasy of romantic love into following them out of the real world and into the universe of two, where he can be king. Do you understand now?
Being financially independent as a woman doesn't guarantee us from the risk of experiencing an exploitative romantic relationship. To understand this better, we must understand where the notion of romance started, which is from 18th century Europe, where low-class men who had nothing to offer a woman used romance, love, as a way to hook in upper-class women, get financial and societal leg up. Were these men actually in love with the women? Absolutely not. Marriage was always a financial contract. Without the concept of love, these men were always stuck marrying women from their own class or lower. It was a way to exploit an upper-class woman, patriarchal trauma and oppression, appealing to her unmet needs of attention, care, being seen, being heard, then capitalistically used to continue to oppress and brainwash women. In the beginning, it was theater that reflected the concept of romance. Then it became music, movies, what we consider now pop culture. Even though our dating changes as a woman who has financial means, unless you learn to become emotionally independent, you still don't know your own value. And you give away yourself like you're nothing to broke-ass, dusty, crusty men who will have no issue exploiting you in every which way. The concept of romance was born to keep women seeking, suffering for, and staying in this fantasy called love.
And just to add to the discourse that women have been having around romantic love being fake and invented in order to trap women, I just want to say, not only are you correct, it's actually even worse than that, because men didn't even make this up. And as per usual, they are just copying somebody else's idea. Animals have had the ability to mate for life as a survival tactic for a long time before men ever caught on to the fact that that could be a good survival tactic. And because men's laziness and selfishness truly knows no bounds, they took it one step further. Because you see, animals who mate for life, they offer each other very much a value and survival proposition for the male animals. That's not a survival proposition for the female animals. You have to understand this. As a woman, I need you to really keep this in your mind at all times. The female species of a population is naturally going to be well protected and taken care of because it is responsible for the reproduction of the entire species. Animal communities where the male animals don't contribute anything to the community but genetic material and or perhaps sometimes violence, in a setup where the males are predisposed to be, violent and domineering and high testosterone or whatever, in most of those communities, they only keep one or two around for that reason. And now we can look at statistics and we can tell that human males are very violent indeed. And we can tell by looking at other statistics that unlike the males of those species that mate for life, human males are also not good at parenting. They're not good at raising and protecting their offspring, which is typically the value proposition in a mate for life type relationship. And yet we still try to mate for life. Why? That's because women are not given a choice. Because up until very recently, and even when I say this, I'm only talking about America. In a lot of countries, this is still not an option for women. But it wasn't until recently that women could have independence of their own at all. And it is for that reason. Because men want the benefits of mating for life with someone without providing those benefits in return. That's why they have made moving about the world so difficult for women, almost like no matter what. There's almost no way to correctly move about the world as a woman. And that's because the men don't want us to figure out that we don't have to mate for life with them if they are bringing nothing to that table. And I'm not joking, look it up. Every single animal that mates for life has an equal parenting part. Species where the male animal gets to just sort of run around and F whatever he wants whenever he wants, there's usually only one of them. That's usually a community of female animals that have agreed to keep this man around even though he's useless so that they can continue to procreate their species. And frankly, given the statistics, once again, given the trends, that is at best what most human men should ever hope for, right? Is to be the town bicycle in a community full of women that all don't mind sharing a man, because the only thing that involves is sharing his genetic material. You're not actually sharing any childcare duties. You're not sharing anything else, really. Everything still falls on you, and the man gets to run around and F whoever he wants. Women are naturally kind of set against that. They don't want that because that's not useful to them. That's not useful. In nature, you have to be useful if you want to be kept alive. So men have gone out of their way to make themselves useful by hoarding resources and by taking rights away from women. So that way they can be useful in being a provider, providing women with resources and giving women back their rights. Do you see where I'm going with this, right? Like, most men would not hang in a mate for life kind of situation because they are useless and they don't want to do any of that stuff. I believe the stat is that 7,000 or 8,000 years ago, only one man would procreate for like every 17 women. So hypergamy, right, basically the lion setup where there's an alpha male, aka the only male, that's been our natural proclivity as women for a very long time because men are not worth mating for life with. And frankly, after resources got introduced into the equation, it only got worse for men because now women could very clearly see who was bringing what to the table. And those odds of men reproducing and those statistics and stuff didn't really improve until just a few hundred years ago because romantic love was invented as something that women should want. And the worst thing to me about romantic love as it pertains to our human species is that it excuses men from the actual responsibility of what the mating for life setup is actually supposed to provide, especially to the mother and to the children of the species in this scenario, which are humans. Like, if the worst part about the whole setup is how badly and negatively it affects mothers and children specifically. It's not good for the survival of our species. That's where y'all need to understand all of these movements are coming from, these 4B, whatever. All of these movements are coming from the fact that women are figuring out what nature's known all along. Human men are only useful to human women if they can withhold something from them first, like resources or safety. In any other case, women are like, no, I'd rather do my own thing because you are useless. Again, the animals that mate for life, that is a survival tactic. And men have gone ahead and bypassed that survival tactic by inventing resources and laws and money. And the first thing that they did was withhold all of that stuff from women so that they could create a different kind of forced mating for life situation to trap women. It's not the men who get trapped by marriage. And they have to very carefully control this like push and pull of things. It's like you want to give women just enough rights so that you can exploit them as fully as possible. But the thing is, giving women freedom and giving women rights always causes women to start backing away from the men and towards independence and away from all of these notions of romantic love and whatnot, because men just don't bring that to the table. They don't bring romantic unconditional love to the table. In fact, if anything, they use love as an excuse to treat women poorly. Instead of being like, I love you, that's why I work extra hard and like whatever, it's like, no, I love you, that's why I did something stupid. Or just give me another chance. And it's always used to actually manipulate women. It's useless to women, and they always figure this out. And they always start backing away and trying to get away from the men. And the men catch up and they do something about it. Like right now, our laws are being rescinded. It's because human males are trying to force a non-consensual mate for life type of situation from human women. So don't fall for it, ladies. Stay safe out there. I love you so much. Godspeed.
For about the last 250 years, we've been loving under the aegis of a philosophy we could call romanticism. And romanticism is a vision of love with very particular assumptions. Let me run through a few of them. There's one soulmate for everybody. You're going to find this soulmate. You're going to find them through slightly mysterious ways, possibly through something almost quasi-divine, like you'll feel pulled. You'll meet them at the supermarket checkout line, the nightclub, and without even knowing too much about them, you will sense that they're your destiny. So you'll feel impelled towards somebody that you don't necessarily know too much of. A force will pull you, and you will feel this is the one. And they will be an angel, literally a sort of descended being from another world. The Romantics were very, very keen on the notion that you didn't have to know someone too well to understand them. Even speaking not very much, the connection will be even deeper. The Romantics also thought that love and sex absolutely belong together, and that you couldn't have a millimeter of disjuncture between the two.
People who have bought into this, we were talking about the Earth School, think that romance is what love really is.
Romance is not love. Love is far deeper, more powerful, and it doesn't wear off.
And romance is going to wear off.
Romance is going to wear off.
Guaranteed.
Because romance is the projection of beautiful qualities within yourself onto another person. It is looking for another person, in other words, to bring into your life what you need and have for yourself, but want from another person. So you see that other person as beautiful or charming, intelligent, gregarious, caring, sexual, sensual, and yet you yourself are all of these things, but instead of cultivating a caring, gregarious, lovingly sexual person yourself, you look for that in someone else.
Romance is not real. But wait. Let me say it better before y'all eat me up and tell me how this one time 10 years ago a man bought you flowers. The concept of romance as we know it today is another tool of patriarchy. Romance is what has allowed common men to have access to women's sexuality and fertility. Because if it were not for romance and love, women would still be going after the best and the brightest and would leave most men out of their dating pool. And do you want to know the perfect place to observe this? Go watch a few episodes of Cheaters, because I guarantee that you will see a pattern. The woman who lives with the cheater always complains about how he doesn't do these nice things that he's doing for the other woman anymore. He doesn't buy her flowers anymore. He doesn't buy her gifts anymore. He doesn't even say kind words to her anymore. You want to know why? Because he already used his romance tool on you and it already worked. He already got you. He already has access to your fertility and access to sex with you. He doesn't have to romance you anymore because he already got what he wanted. Romance is a tool of patriarchy that allows common, ordinary men access to our reproduction and our sexuality.
There is no such thing as true love. Well, actually, let me take a step back. I don't believe in the type of love that's been shoved down our throats since childhood. One of the most common things I hear women say after breaking up with their boyfriends is the spark just wasn't there anymore. Or I feel like we just grew apart. But what is the spark? And why did you allow yourselves to grow apart when you could have grown together? We have been raised to romanticize everything. And we've also been raised in a time of unlimited choices. And both of those combine into a bad cocktail of unrealistic expectations. Guess what? There probably isn't going to be an orchestra playing in the background when you realize you love somebody. And as your relationship becomes more predictable and there are less rocks to turn over, it's not going to be nearly as exciting as it was in the beginning. And you know what else? You can actually decide to grow with your partner rather than on your own. You can both pick a spot and aim for it together. And when you find that shared goal, nothing can stop you from building the strongest relationship imaginable in pursuit of it. That's what love is. It's finding someone you're passionate about and finding happiness in true partnership rather than a fiery, dopamine-fueled romance.
This might sound like a conspiracy theory, but isn't the concept of romance and love, romantic love, the biggest propaganda to keep women voluntarily in serving their patriarchal gender roles? Now, hear me out, because back in the days, women had to stay in these doomed somewhat relationship where her husband was not providing, he was just incompetent, not raising the kids properly, not carrying out his part of the deal, as in being a provider, head of the household, protector, whatnot. And like women had to do that. Women had to remain in that role because they didn't have any other choice. Like that was what was expected of them. Like it's not like they could just pack and go. But nowadays, with this concept of love, this unwavering love, women voluntarily stay in relationships where the man is not clearly keeping their part of the deal. They're not providing, they're not loving, they're not being good like fathers, husbands, like you name it. And women stay and like support them like in their lows because they love them. Because they love them, you sacrifice their entire life and voluntarily remain in the role that the patriarchal society expects you to remain in? Because you love him? All because you loved a boy? So this seems like a good food for thought for us to think about.
Yes, this is why I agree with Toni Morrison's statement that romantic love is the most destructive idea in the history of human thought. Romantic love is a psychological weapon that's been used to brainwash women and men into believing that love is outside of them, therefore distracting them from ever cultivating a loving relationship with themselves. Once again, it's another ploy to turn us into the perfect consumer by externalizing and outsourcing our social and emotional needs. We're pretty much conditioned from movies, media, TV shows, books, etc. in childhood to outsource all of our social emotional needs and give another person the impossible task of fulfilling them. And the biggest problem of all is that we don't even know ourselves, who we are and what we want. How can we advocate for ourselves in a relationship? How can we even attract the right partner? How can we even end up in a compatible relationship when we don't even know our own needs? When we haven't taken the time to investigate like what's right for us? When we are going after the idea of love sold to us from the media, it's just another recipe for self-sabotage and countless failures and frustration. And we wonder why we're in a loneliness epidemic. We're wondering why 1 in 3 marriages end in divorce. It's because we don't actually know what the fuck we're doing, and we're literally going ass backwards into everything because everything we were taught is bullshit.